To our local establishment, and welcome to Marvel Talk. I am Ol'Ed Fries, and I am joined by the God of Stories, Andre C. Andre, how you doing?
I'm doing absolutely phenomenal. This weekend has been absolutely tremendous so far. I've gotten to watch the incredible season finale for Loki, which while leaving us some questions on the table, left it in a really great place, and just I'm excited for what comes next. And then we got, and what we talk about tomorrow, we got to see the Marvels, and I absolutely loved it. So again, great weekend of Marvel, baby.
Marvel's back, baby. Marvel's
Hell
back.
Hell yeah!
Everybody's sitting here telling us Marvel's on its deathbed. Marvel doesn't know what it's doing. Marvel's in danger. And the numbers aren't great for the Marvels. And you know what? Fuck the numbers.
Yeah.
Spoilers. I had a ball. I think that's one of the best Marvel movies they've had in a very long time.
Yeah. I think it might have been the best one since, other than Spider-Man, it's the best one in this last few years.
No. It's better than Spider-Man No Way Home. It is by far and away.
No fucking way.
That movie was absolutely tomorrow. We'll talk about it tomorrow. But food for thought. It's better than No Way Home.
But goddamn Loki.
Astrid joining us. Hello, Astrid. Are you there with family? Let us know if you have children watching as well, Astrid. Hopefully you guys.
I just realized I'm wearing the wrong company shirt. Shit.
All right, and Andre was replaced, and we'll have somebody new tomorrow night. No, I'm just kidding.
I just realized
I do want to start this episode of Loki with a bit of a spoiler. It's not really a spoiler, but we're going to go ahead and pull this up. So this was announced by Marvel before the show aired. After telling us, no, the children are not here yet. This is how the episode started. We all know the Marvel fanfare intro. And before we get into our thoughts about this episode, I thought it would be great to just play this. It is readily available on every social media platform that you can find, so go ahead and give it a watch. But this is great. Just figure this out, and we'll tell you what's happening if you haven't figured it out by the end. How great was that as an intro to this episode?
So, gorgeous. And I was watching and I'm like, the fuck's going on? Because again, I saw Captain Marvel before I saw this. And so I saw it the right way. And then I watched this and I'm like, the fuck's going on? And then I realized it's backwards. And I was just like, yeah, this is cool.
Not only is the video backwards, the audio is backwards as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's so great. Actually, the little ones are watching on their own devices, but they're too shy to say hi. Well, hello, hi. Alana and Ariana. We greatly
appreciate Pizarro family
joining us. Thank you for joining us. I thought that was great. I thought that was inspired by Disney to go ahead and load up the introduction that way.
Mm-hmm.
To have that be how we were introduced into this episode was sensational by Marvel.
Oh, 100%.
Now, before we go any further into the episode, because like I said, that was readily available all day prior to the episode airing. It was not hidden by Marvel in any way, shape, or form. So it's not technically a spoiler. What did you think of this episode? Non-spoilers. Which is very hard for this episode.
I laughed so hard at points in this episode. I was just, and again, it took me to places, and it just, there's some great stuff, great dialogue in talking in this, where just two actors being actors and just playing off each other and doing great things. Lots of great fun times. There's some sadness. There's some epicness. It's all there in this episode.
Yeah. I'll say I went into this episode expecting Groundhog Day, and I think that there's a much better Marvel equivalent to it. And we'll talk about it in just a few minutes, because I think there's a much better Marvel equivalent to what this episode was.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, Marvel not only stuck the landing, they also botched the landing at the same time. I have some quibbles. I'm not as in love with this as a lot of other people are. I think there are some things they did wrong. I think there are some things they did vastly correct.
Okay, we'll talk about it.
We will absolutely talk about it. I think this is perfect as a bookend with the episode being named Glorious Purpose. The first episode of season 1 of Loki is named Glorious Purpose. The last episode of Loki is named Glorious Purpose. For those who haven't seen, since the episode has aired, Tom Hiddleston has done some press because they didn't have much time to do press beforehand because the after strike. By the way, SAG after strike is officially over. We can now go forth with our entire plan of watching and reviewing the entire MCU from start to finish.
Back catalog, baby, is coming. The MCU back catalog is coming soon. I cannot. The only problem I have with the back catalog is we have to watch Hulk as the second movie, and I hate that goddamn movie.
Yeah. But remember, after the Hulk, we really don't have a bad movie for about 15 movies.
Thor: The Dark World?
No, I said a bad movie. We don't have a bad movie until at least 10 or 15 movies.
Thor: The Dark World?
Thor: The Dark World is a fantastic piece of cinema.
It's fine at best.
Thor: The Dark World is a fantastic piece of cinema, as is Avengers: Age of Ultron.
That's a great movie. I enjoyed that one.
By the way, both of those movies have been made significantly better since they were released.
Yeah,
Going back, they've been made significantly better.
Yeah, that's both a problem.
On rewatch now, will be watched much better than they were when we originally watched them before. And by the way, I was high on that movie going into it the first time. The next bad movie that I think of after the Incredible Hulk is probably Iron Man 3. I'm a big proponent that Iron Man 3 is one of the
that's only like 5 or 6 movies later. If you think about it. Iron Man.
Anyways,
Iron Man, yeah.
The MCU back catalog, we'll get into that as me and Andre talk more about it, but just know that show is coming. We are now going to move, because this show is going to last forever if we don't. Spoiler section.
Forever!
This episode fucking rocked.
Oh my god.
Levels. While I will still attest that it's not a perfect episode, and I've seen people saying that this may have been the greatest episode of Marvel anything that's ever existed, I will say I have some significant qualms about this episode that we're going to get into as we go.
How do I say this? Without shitting on every other show, because I think other shows have done great finales, this was the strongest finale of any show, in my opinion. Like, of all at least all the Disney Plus shows, I think this is the strongest finale because it ended on yes, there's like I won't say there's not things I wish they would have done better, but I enjoyed every little bit of this. Where there's been in other finales, I've gone like, why the fuck did they do that?
No, I agree. The things I have that are problematic are little, but I feel like those little things are going to become bigger things depending on how they do it. And again, this entire ending of this show is setting up Marvel to have ways out going forward should they need to make decisions. And I think that's where my biggest problems are, is that Marvel didn't decide going out of this episode how they were going to get out of it. And again, we'll get there.
Well, but even if, like, you don't, like... Again, the ending happens so that the world can take care of it.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Kang of it all.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He did what he did so that...
The Kang of it all is left too open-ended because Marvel hasn't yet decided if they're going God Emperor Doom or if they're going Kang the Conqueror going forward. And honestly, I wish Kevin would have made a decision one way or the other, so we could have had a better ending, knowing which way we're going.
But the caveat to that is all this shit was done before his legal troubles came out. This was all in the can.
They have they had another alternate ending to this episode, apparently. They have other versions of this that they have done. I think that there were more that they could have done with the idea of giving us that we're definitely getting more Kang. Because the way they left it so we could very easily have Kang Dynasty, and that's it for Kang the Conqueror. And that when Secret Wars comes, it can be God Emperor Doom.
Which I'm okay with. Honestly, I honestly hope, like, and again, I don't want Kang as part of Secret Wars. I want it to be God Emperor Doom or another being entity running that. Kang Dynasty should be where they dispatch of Kang, in my personal opinion. And
I have an issue with, we dealt with Thanos over 3 entire phases, and Thanos is a minor villain compared to Kang the Conqueror. And you're going to tell me that Ant-Man and Ants, and then whatever happens in the Kang Dynasty, which is going to give us 2.5 hours, are going to completely finish the story of the greatest villain that Marvel has ever written. And for me, that's a problem.
Again, I also look at it, and it's a problem the MCU has had throughout the entire way, is they haven't had a good villain outside of Thanos. And
well, they had one. They just turned him into a hero. We're talking about him right now.
No, but you know what I mean. Like, even then, like, if you really think about Loki, as bad guy as he was, they dispatched him in the first one. Yes, he had his things in 2 and 3 of Thor. But they dispatched him in Avengers. It's just, he hasn't really been a villain since Avengers. You know what I mean? Like, they turned him, like,
I agree.
They half heroed him in Thor 2, and they heroed him in Thor 3, and then killed him off at the start of Infinity War. But
the arc of Loki is the greatest arc in the entirety of the MCU.
But I'm saying, just as pure villains, every other villain dies in their movie. That, I think, again, and a lot of them have been weaker. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Yeah. Not that I dislike the hero, they're the villain, but there's, again, it's Marvel.
We'll talk about Marvel's villain problem tomorrow.
Marvelizations of the villains. That's the problem. That's what I like to call it. Marvelizations of the villains. But they're in between a rock and a hard place. Do you double down for this dude is guilty of what he's doing? Do you double down on this guy? Do you risk doubling down? I understand why they have to leave it so open-ended.
I do too, but at the same time, I would have doubled down here because you can always fix it going forward.
Oh, I agree.
All you need is 2 or 3 end credit scenes, and you can fix this.
I don't disagree with you on that. I'm just saying,
because you're not canceling Kang Dynasty at all. There's no way that movie doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I'll sit here and say it right now. There is no way that we don't see the Kang Dynasty movie in its entirety. We're going to have to get there. They've already announced it. They cannot backtrack fast enough to get rid of that movie in its entirety.
And again, it could be, we could have a whole new actor playing Kang. It could be multiple actors playing Kang. Again,
which is fine, because that's the out that they have with Kang the Conqueror, is it doesn't have to be Jonathan Majors every time. You can change this for other characters.
100%.
But we should probably move forward with Loki, because that's what we're here to talk about.
Yeah.
Like I said, that's my main quibble with this, is that they didn't go hard enough for me on Kang in the future.
I agree with what you say, but I wish we would have had a more definitive of what's coming next for this world. Yep. But again, we're gonna get answers like Deadpool and Wolverine. Supposedly the TVA is involved in that movie, and there's a bunch of other things. And Astrid in the chat saying she felt the same. And I get it. It bothers me, but like I understand. I'm not gonna get mad at them for. They still gave me a great episode, so I'm not gonna get mad at it. Well, they'll establish what they're gonna establish in the next little while. with the movies going forward.
Once the episode starts proper, we get the time slipping Loki going back, but we get pulled into it as the intro finishes playing backwards. We get pulled backwards from the explosion of the time loom all the way back to Loki standing on the deck.
Mm-hmm.
And then the wonderful notes of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony hit as he realizes that he needs to do this again.
Isn't it like a disco version or something?
And it is in this one. Yes, I even have the song and the artist. It's right here. I don't have to go look up for it. The song in the background that they continue playing throughout this portion of Loki doing Groundhog's Day. But I will tell you, I think it's not so much Loki doing Groundhog Day as it is What If Episode 4.
Yeah, pretty much.
This is Doctor Strange trying to reverse what happens to his girlfriend in Episode 4 of What If.
100%.
I think what it is.
It's a fixed point. This will happen no matter what. That's
and that's the interesting thing. And we'll find out as we go on why it's fixed and why it has to happen. The song in the background, before I lose track of it, is song in the background was Walter Murphy's A Fifth of Beethoven. It
was so good. It was so good.
It's a disco remix, and basically all you have are the heavy notes of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Replaying as Loki continues to set Victor up and continues to do it. And they try to do it faster because he asks Obi, what do we have to do? And Obi says, well, we just weren't fast enough. So Loki starts taking over and he starts redoing everything as quickly as possible. And it doesn't work. And Victor dies. And Victor dies. And Victor dies. Loki figures out that it's not so much going faster, that he has to go back earlier. And he goes back to an earlier scene that we didn't quite see. We saw a little bit of this as a later portion, where Miss Minutes, Ravonna Renslayer, Victor Timely, and Brad are sitting there trying to figure something out. And then Loki bursts in the room and says this.
Miss Minutes, I know right now you're hurt and you're angry, but we need your help in finishing the throughput multiplier fast.
He walks in and he doesn't talk to Ravonna. He doesn't talk to Victor. He talks directly to Miss Minutes. What were your thoughts on this? When you heard him say, Miss Minutes, we need your help.
It was weird, man. It was weird. I don't know, man. It was weird.
It was so weird.
Yeah.
But I loved it. At the same time, I loved that he goes back to Miss Minutes and he's like, I need your help in finishing the throughput multiplier faster because we're not quite getting it done. But even this turns out to be a failure. And he dies. And he dies. Loki then goes back even further to the introduction of Ouroboros and Victor Timely, when they first bring Victor to the TVA. And he goes through the entirety of the scene where they go ahead and they do, the spacewalk on the gangway all the way to shooting the thing. And he takes over the entire presentation. He doesn't want anybody else talking. At one point he asks, is everybody on board? And everybody says yes, like he's their teacher. It is fantastic. He takes the throughput multiplier piece that Victor Timely has in his bag out of Victor Timely's bag before Victor even acknowledges that it exists. And he explains to them that that this all needs to happen, and it needs to happen as quickly as possible. And then he looks at OB and he says this. And yes, I have a lot of audio files from this one because honestly, the audios are much more important than any of the visuals in this episode. Mm-hmm. This is what he asks Ouroboros.
Ernst, I don't even know what I'm looking at.
What is that? Obi, how long will it take me to know everything that you know about mechanics, physics, and engineering?
How much do you know?
Let's assume I don't know much, but I'm a fast learner, and I'm a god.
Well, let's start at the beginning then.
We don't have time for this. Look, it's better if we walk along.
Obi, I understand that if I had to know, I really, really, really had to know, how long would it take?
Decades.
Centuries.
Centuries. Which again is the second reason why I say this is no longer Groundhog Day and is more Doctor Strange. Now, mind you, I will understand that I was told I was wrong by a friend of mine who says that it's been told to us that before Bill Murray admits that he's a god, not the god, but a god in Groundhog Day, he was having done it for 10,000 years.
Seems about right. But again,
I didn't understand growing up watching Groundhog Day, but apparently the point that we're supposed to have been made in Groundhog Day is that it happened not just a bunch of times. It happened so much that he lived that day for thousands of years.
yes, and that's what I think this episode gets at too, is that yes, we see all the times he repeated everything throughout the episode, but also there's a line later on. He says, "How do you know? Have it done this more times?" And it's like I assume he's done this probably a good 10,000, 20,000 times. The times we never saw it. I find it so goddamn funny how he's constantly trying to fix these little things. He's like, "Don't put it down. Don't put it down. It'll fall off the gangway."
Don't! I've got you covered. Don't you worry about that part. I got you covered.
I love these lines. I love all the little intricacies of it where he's finding all these little problems and he's like constantly trying to fix it. It's just not working. It's just so good.
We then get a scene that says centuries later in the terms of 5 years later, like we did in Endgame, which was fantastic.
It's so good.
Victor finally gets it all to go right after being given final instructions by Loki. And again, I told you the audio is the most important part of this episode. As Andre was just saying, these are Loki's final instructions to Victor Timely.
Get suited up. When those doors open, get down the gangway as fast as you can, load the multiplier, hit the green button, launch it, and get back. Got it. By the way, remember, tape your right thumb, left knee, and faceplate, or the temporal radiation will peel your skin right off. What's the first step? Trip hazard.
Right thumb, left knee, faceplate.
One last thing.
Yes.
Whatever you do not set the multiplier down or it will roll off the gangway. Okay? Don't forget. Be brave.
So good.
Don't forget, be brave.
And then when he goes down, when they're down, and he even tells Casey, "Oh, make sure you lock up the front of his helmet." Like it's those little things. Make sure you tape up all the holes. Like it's so good.
Ash was saying I wouldn't have been able to keep up.
Oh no.
Also, by the way, the only other person who seems to notice that this keeps repeating and that Loki keeps saying the word again is Mobius.
Well, if you look at Sylvie, she starts thinking something. You can kind of see it on Sylvie.
Yeah, she sees something's weird, but she never really owns up to it like Mobius.
No.
Like, he was like, again? Like, he starts actively trying to question Loki at certain points.
It's true.
In this episode, we see the times we see Victor Timely die is 11.
But I imagine it's more like
I agree.
20,000.
It's hundreds of thousands more. I'm just saying they showed us 11 different times that Victor Timely dies.
Yeah.
But finally, it all goes right. Finally, the throughput gets shot out at the time loom and it starts to work until it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And we find out that the branches are duplicating at an infinite rate. And that no matter how much they know or how much they do, infinite is like trying to divide by 0. It is mathematically impossible to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Loki realizes that it's not about fixing the time loom. It's about fixing the fact that there's infinite realities, which leads us to Act 2 of this show. Act 2, dealing with He Who Remains.
Mm-hmm.
One of my other little quibbles is the fact that none of these beginning sections where he times in are the same as the original season finale from last season. So when he time slips into his own body as Sylvie's trying to kill He Who Remains the first time, it's not even the same setup of words, because he time slips in after he's already tried to like put his hands on her shoulders and calm her down and tell her to stop, which never happened in last season's finale, which to me was another little bit of a quibble. I would have liked all of the times where Loki was time slipping in for the beginning of those to all have been the same until the moment he gets there, where then things change.
But again, that was a note to the audience. It's like, oh, this isn't the first time he's doing this scene. Yeah. It's trying to get you to look at that in that way. Is the fact that where we saw it in the first time we saw it was probably the 26,000th time that Loki did it.
Yeah. And we go back to him talking to He Who Remains. And he tries to save He Who Remains a few times, and it doesn't happen.
Dead. It was so good.
5 times. We are shown 5 different times where He Who Remains says, "See you soon." Like Booker T, he was a 5-time dying champion of the world. But
and how many million more times did she actually kill him? That's my question.
Loki then looks at him and goes, "Can't you even defend yourself?" And that's the moment that He Who Remains realizes that Loki has gotten far enough in doing this that it's time to pause time and have a discussion. And he sits there and he talks to him, and He Who Remains like, "Loki, I knew this was going to happen. I paved the way for you to time slip. I know exactly what you're doing. I've seen you do it. It's all part of you ending up here." And I love this scene.
Me too. Because now you think about, if you think about episode 6 of season 1, the conversations he's having with them, it's more of a conversation to Loki with her there. If you really think about it now, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But Loki then, and he goes, "Oh, you haven't figured out how to pause time? I figured you would have done that by the time you got here." And Loki plays dumb for this little bit as He Who Remains have this conversation with him. We have Chris Parrish jumping in. Hello, Mr. Parrish. Thank you,
Papa Parrish. What's up, dog?
So He Who Remains talking about him. And he's like, "Yeah, this is exactly the conversations that, you need to have, and you need to do all these things." And then Loki blows his mind by going, "Yeah, we've had this conversation before." And this is where He Who Remains gets frightened because he realizes that Loki's done this so many times that He Who Remains doesn't even know that Loki's done this before now. And he goes, and he chalks one up to Loki for beating him at a point. And the great part about this scene is He Who Remains then drops everything. Because even in the earlier conversation where he was talking to Loki, he was in character as He Who Remains. Not as in Jonathan Majors was in character, but the He Who Remains character was in character. The animated, excited He Who Remains that we saw in the season 1 finale. He was on that same kind of attitude when he thought he had the upper hand on Loki. As soon as Loki shows him that he's done this so many times that even he doesn't remember doing it, that's where he knows, okay, we're done with all of the bullshit. And he just talks to Loki like a normal dude. No act, no animated voice. It's Jonathan Majors' real voice at this point. Just sitting there, and they have a conversation. And he explains that the temporal loom The failsafe isn't the temporal loom exploding. The temporal loom was created to be the failsafe that was always going to be necessary to delete all of the branches from when He Who Remains is killed. Because whatever finale is going to happen, however they try to dispose, whomever and however they try to dispose of He Who Remains, is always going to have the infinite branches. It's always going to break the loom, and there's never going to be a way to fix it. And that the temporal loom was created to have such an explosion that it kills everything, every timeline, everything that lives in existence, with the exception of the sacred timeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, because you look back to what was it, episode 3, when they went to get Victor Timely, and it was on a branch timeline. Mm-hmm. So did it make sense? So
it did, because the branch Victor Timely's timeline branches the moment he's given the TVA guidebook.
Yeah, but again, if you think about it, if that was truly his destiny, that wouldn't have been a branch.
It wasn't. See, that's the point. It's on the sacred timeline when Ravonna goes back to give him the book, is on the sacred timeline. Victor Timely, when we see him in 1893,
oh, you're right,
is on a branch timeline. It is always supposed to happen that he was given the book, because it's the first step in making sure that the Ouroboros of it all, the snake eating its own tail, he has to get the book to create the things that will make it available for Ouroboros to create the timeline.
Yeah, and then when they went to him 30 years later, that was the branch timeline. That makes more sense.
Yeah, when she shows up in 1863, that is on the sacred timeline.
Mm-hmm.
He is supposed to be given the book, but the moment he gets the book, that's the moment the timeline branches. Because that makes him a scientist. That creates Victor Timely doing all the creations, which change the way the timeline flows.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same way in the comic books. Victor Timely being Victor Timely is technically a branch, because it's Kang the Conqueror from the 30th century going back and creating technology that never existed in the 1900s in Timely, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Again, Marvel does a fantastic job with all of these things eating their own tails. The Ouroboros of it all. And again, that episode title, that character name, is so perfectly done, because the entirety of this show is now proven to be a bootstrap paradox. Mm-hmm. It has to be the bootstrap paradox. For Kang the Conqueror to exist, for He Who Remains to exist, there has to be a bootstrap paradox. And I say, for that version to exist, there needs to be a bootstrap paradox. Because it's at this moment that Loki is told, if he doesn't, that Kang says, I call him at this point Kang, because at this point I don't think he's no longer He Who Remains at this point. At this point he's brought himself back to being Kang the Conqueror.
Yeah, very much so.
And he says it's the reason why the TVA exists, the reason why the sacred timeline exists, is because of the fact that I'm here to make the tough calls. I'm here to sit alone forever, because if I don't, the multiversal war will wipe out everything, including the sacred timeline. Nothing will exist if I'm not here. I am mercy. And Loki asked the question, is it mercy for you or mercy for everyone else?
For him. 100% for him.
And this is the moment where Loki starts to figure out what he has to do.
And if you really think about it, like the more I think about it now, the sacred timeline isn't that sacred at all. It's just his timeline that he wants to keep intact. That's all it is.
Yeah, the sacred timeline is only the sacred timeline because it's the timeline that makes it so that Kang the Conqueror's variants no longer pop up. It was explained to us in episode 6 last year. And we thought, oh, it's sacred because it's the only timeline where nothing bad happens. And no, it's the same. That's the sacred timeline, like you said, because it's the only way that Kang can sit at the end of time forever is by making sure that he creates a loop to consistently go back. Or as he says in this episode, reincarnation, baby. That because he's always killed, it will always end up coming back to this point, because the moment he's killed, that is what causes the failsafe that will overload the temporal loom that will cause everything to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Loki realizes now that he needs to figure out what the tough call is. And He Who Remains kind of tells him, go ahead, kill her. Because if you don't kill her, she's going to kill me. And you're never going to get through to her. So you have to kill her. But before he goes back to do that, he goes back to episode 1, season 1. And we get our first visual of the episode here. At least visuals that I pulled up. In Time Theater 25, Loki goes back to have a conversation with Mobius at the point that he was originally brought in, where Mobius thinks he's talking to the original 2012 Loki.
Mm-hmm.
And Loki time slips into that point and tells Mobius, look, stop. I know all this. We've been through all this. I'm so far beyond where you've been, my friend. I just need you to explain to me how you decide who lives and who dies. And Mobius is very quick, because this is fully indoctrinated dogma Mobius. Mm-hmm. He has no reservations about the timeline. This is as good a TVA agent as Mobius will ever be. Mm-hmm. Is this moment right here. Because from here on out, Loki starts to get to Mobius. Mm-hmm. So this is the first conversation they're having. This is the furthest he can go back to find the most indoctrinated version of Mobius. Mm-hmm. Andre, go ahead and talk to me about your thoughts about this before I go ahead and give mine.
Again, it was odd to watch Mobius be this completely different character again, who's opened his eyes. Even before the end of season 6, he had opened his eyes so much. Mm-hmm. Or at the end of episode 6, season 1, he opened his eyes so much, and it was beautiful to see him have this conversation with, and then having Mobius picking up into the conversation so quickly too, like changing up what he would have to what he expected in this conversation to what he needs to have in this conversation. It was kind of beautiful in seeing how he evolved and changed in his conversation with Loki.
Yeah. I have written down here in my notes, Loki goes back to season 1, episode 1 in Time Theater 25. Goes back to Mobius's interrogation of him. And he uses the knowledgeable Mobius, who knows nothing about anything beyond this moment. He's never seen the TVA as anything other than the perfect thing that it always has been. That he's lived his entire life here. That he's never even contemplated that he's a variant. Hmm? And Loki goes, no. I get it. I know why you're here. I know what you want. And he's like, oh, okay. And that's the key that Mobius needs to flip the script. He now knows this Loki is definitely something he doesn't. It's not the same person that was sitting in front of him when he started. Mm-hmm. And he asks Mobius to explain to him about how to make the hard choice, life and death. And Mobius is very quick to point out, we don't kill people. It's not life or death here. We prune. We prune things that aren't supposed to belong. We prune things based on how timeline is supposed to unfold. And and Loki just irks him enough that Mobius breaks another wall down. And he goes, fine. I'm going to tell you a story about some hunters that were sent to prune an 8-year-old boy who's eventually going to kill 5,000 people in the Black Sea. But when we got there, he was just sitting there playing with his brother, jumping in the water and jumping off the dock. The reason why Mobius couldn't prune the 8-year-old boy was because it reminded him of his 2 kids that he still at this point doesn't know exist, but somewhere deep down in his soul, he does know. And it's his partner who steps in to prune another child. Because this is the same partner, Ravonna Renslayer, who will go after a young child version of Loki that starts all of the Loki episodes.
Sylvie.
Yep. I thought this was fantastic. I thought this was incredibly well done.
It was beautifully done backstory that just gave you so much more to who this man truly is, and just warms your heart, and how this decent that this man truly is. That even he didn't want to hurt these kids. He didn't want to It's just really beautiful how awesome that Mobius is.
In this picture, we see Mobius saying goodbye to Loki, but not realizing, because this is Loki's moment to say goodbye to Mobius. Because at this point, he's pretty sure what he has to do.
Yeah.
But he has one more stop. Loki then goes back to the world-ending situation of last episode in season 5. In season 2, episode 5. Right before everything is done and before he learns how to time slip. And he pauses time. And he starts talking to Sylvie. And he starts explaining to her what's about to happen. And it's at this moment that Sylvie realizes what's going on. And she says to him, I refuse to give you the blessing that you're looking for. I will not give you permission to kill me.
But she says she understands, but she will not give him permission.
She understands why he thinks he needs to do it.
Yeah.
But it's just such a great scene because it's not as long as you think it would be. You think it would be longer. But it's this nice, short and sweet scene. And she brings up this great point at the end where she goes, I've lived at the end of apocalypses for my entire life. Sometimes it's okay for things to be destroyed. And Loki comes up with the finish, which is what solidifies in his mind what he has to do going forward in Act 3.
Because he just Vince McMahon it and rewrote the finish right there.
Not only did he Vince McMahon it and rewrite the finish, he tells her that it's not only that some things are allowed to be destroyed. Things are only allowed to be destroyed if you can create something better.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you want to hear something really fun? I was watching one of the fantastic breakdowns from New Rock Stars.
I watched it too.
And there's a moment here where Eric Voss goes into, this isn't just a scene in an episode.
No.
Episode 5, me and you talked about it, how it was an episode of filler.
Yeah.
That episode wasn't exactly the episode 5 that was planned by the makers of Loki. The episode 5 that was originally planned was nixed. And not only was it nixed, it was completely nuked by the people at Marvel Studios. Whatever was supposed to be in episode 5 was completely rewritten over the course of a weekend.
That's a Vince McMahon right there.
Yep. The episode 5 that we saw was rewritten over a short period of time because Marvel Studios completely nuked the episode 5 that was originally written in. Which makes me wonder what that episode... And by the way, Eric Martin, the man who talked about this, also says that not only did they nuke it and he had to come up with something else, the new episode 5 is better than the original episode 5 that was planned. He
That was
said
a great
Marvel
episode.
Studios made the correct call looking back.
It was a great episode. But again, it was just like it happened just to sit there.
It did. It happened to take place because it needed to set up things that were going to happen here.
Yeah.
It had to teach us that. So it was an episode of filler to get us to where we are here.
Yeah.
Loki now has permission. He knows exactly what he needs to do. Loki goes ahead and goes back to the moment just before the loom is going to explode.
Like when he left her, I'm like, he's going to go fucking kill her in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And then he jumps back to the loom. And I'm like, what the fuck did he just do?
And this is it's just fantastic. This scene is utterly fantastic. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. There's one more thing. In the Mobius scene, I did pull another piece of audio where he talks about the glorious purpose that Loki keeps talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And Mobius breaks down purpose and burden. And I pulled the audio, so I want to use it. It was just so fantastic.
Gotta keep the big picture in mind. Most purpose is more burden than glory. And trust me, you never want to be the guy who avoids it because you can't live with the burden.
For 14 years, we've been hearing about Tom Hiddleston's Loki's glorious purpose.
Yeah.
And what it is and what it was supposed to be. And it's ever changing. In Thor 1, it was taking the throne of Asgard. In the Avengers, it was having the Tesseract and giving it to Thanos and being
conquering Earth. Yeah.
As time goes on, the glorious purpose changed to being friends with his brother, to having his family, to standing side by side as Ragnarok happens, to his final moments where Thanos snaps his neck. And the last words he says to Thanos is, "You will never be a god." At this point, Loki realizes what he needs to do. He doesn't put on a spacesuit while everybody else is still talking about what's going to happen next with Victor Timely. Loki runs down to the downstairs area. Mobius and Sylvie go with him to try to stop him. And he locks the door and he looks at them. And they're yelling, "Loki, what are you doing? Loki." And he says this.
Ugh.
I know what I need to do. I know what I want. And I know what type of God I need to be for all of you. Just absolutely incredible. Astrid, I love Loki with tears in her eyes.
Oh, God, dude, I'm almost wanting to tear up here, man. Fuck.
Astrid also says, when they sent Victor the first time, I was wondering why Loki didn't do it. Because it made sense that it had to be Victor. It always made sense that it was Victor to fix something in case something goes wrong, to be the science on the outside. Yeah. This is where they started to get you in the feels.
Yep.
Because now Loki goes ahead and opens the door using his magic. No suit, no nothing. And he starts walking out. And we realize a couple of things here. We've been told multiple times throughout the MCU's history that the Asgardians live for millennia. That they live for so long that the entirety of a human life is but a moment to them. It's one of the reasons why Thor never really wanted to get involved with Jane Foster. Because of how short human life is in compared to the Asgardians. Because they're gods. They're true living gods.
Yep.
So he walks out there and he has all the temporal radiation. Remember, the temporal radiation is ripping years off of whatever walks into it. Well, Loki can live for hundreds of thousands of years. So as he walks out there with nothing on, all it's doing is ripping the years away. But because unlike a human, so Victor Timely's human. He gets ripped apart because he only lives for so long. So as soon as he's exposed to the harshest parts of the temporal radiation, his life is over. Loki can live long enough that he can walk the entire path. And it starts ripping things apart from Loki. And he starts losing articles of clothing. And it turns him into this older, serious god. Or as the comics would call him, the god of stories.
Yeah, baby.
Loki, as we all know, is the god of mischief in Norse mythology.
Mm-hmm.
However, in a time period, I believe it wasn't too long ago, I want to say it's within the last 5 or 10 years, when they did a reset of the comics, Loki decided to become the god of stories.
2015, because at that point he had become the god of lies, which means he could like pretty much say whatever he wanted. He can get and create whatever he wanted. And he realized, oh, that just means I can tell stories. And he ended up having the ability to change what the fuck happened in history. And that's where he became the god of stories. And this was the reveal.
So fantastic. Barry Monkey says, so they needed to train a giant turtle to do it. Sort of. Also, hello, Barry Monkey. Thank you for joining.
Hi, Barry.
We appreciate it. I mean, it's not too far off. They needed something that could live long enough to take all the temporal radiation.
Mm.
So it makes sense. Loki then explodes the temporal loom. With his magic, he makes the temporal loom explode. And it looks like this, as Loki starts bringing the branches back together after complete darkness.
Well, just watching him like climb these invisible stairs and like grabbing each of the timelines, and then the green flow starts flowing through the timelines, was absolutely gorgeous scene to watch.
Yeah.
And then this happens when okay, so he walks up and the golden throne forms.
Well, not even that. He rips a hole directly to the citadel at the end of time.
Yeah.
So that he can walk up as he's bringing the branches back to life. Because as soon as the magic works, everything goes dark. It's black. There is no life left anywhere in the universe. And all the branches go away. And he starts grabbing all the dead branches and bringing them back to life. As he walks further and further down the gangway. And then, as you say, after the tear opens up, there are invisible stairs that he continues to bring branches back to life as he sits down. And with all his magic, he touches the branches together in the center while sitting on the throne at the end of time. Because he's broken the time loom. He's broken the sacred timeline. Life no longer existed anywhere. So there's no longer a he who remains. And he goes ahead and puts the timelines together. And then after this picture right here, he forms them into something that represents Loki a bit more.
Do you have a shot of it? Oh.
It focuses to Yggdrasil, the tree of life, the world tree. As explained in Norse mythology. At the bottom is Loki and all the branched timelines. In the center is where everything is woven together. And at the top is the sacred timeline.
Multiple timelines coexisting with each other.
Because Loki has chosen for that to be the way life goes.
Mm-hmm.
He's given up everything for his friends to be able to live.
Fuck.
Just insane. Yes, the visuals. There's a reason why I didn't pull visuals from all of the episode to be able to pull a few visuals from everything that happens here.
Yeah, dude,
Because
it was.
The CGI of this is absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Did a
they're
great
using
job.
the colors of Loki and they're using the colors of the timeline, the sacred timeline, and they're mixing it all together.
It's amazing. And that's not even the end.
No, that's the end of Act 3, and now we get the epilogue, shall we say.
Yeah.
Where we see a much happier TVA. People are working, they're maintaining the tree, they've brought back Miss Minutes. And we see something on the floor.
Well, the biggest part about Miss Minnesota is like, can we trust her? And Owen Boris is like, I don't know. So good. So
I
good.
also found something very interesting. And again, it was pointed out to me in one of the many reviews that I watched. This is on the floor of the TVA. We've seen this since episode 1. The words "for all time, always." If you take the initials of "for all time, always," FATA. If you take the word FATA as a Latin word, guess what it means?
I don't know.
Fate. For all time, always is broken down into an anagram. It just means fate.
Fuck. I literally just put it into Google Translate and it does. Jesus Christ.
FATA is the Latin word for fate.
That's great, man.
Such fantastic job that by the way, nobody in any review that I ever saw in season 1 noticed that "for all time, always," which is something we've heard since the beginning of this show, ever put 2 and 2 together that means fate in Latin. We then go to the temporal void where Ravonna is stuck. Oh, also, I'm sorry. No, before we do that, OB has written his second bestseller because he has the second edition of the TVA guidebook. Slightly more yellowed version of the orange guidebook that we've seen before. Yeah. We also get a scene of Victor Timely back in 1863.
Young Victor Timely.
To the open window that blows in what normally would have been dropping off the guidebook, but this time there is none.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about this character tomorrow.
We then continue going along to where Ravonna is stuck in the void. And she sees this. At the very end, it's brought to us that the original seal of the TVA is somewhere in the temporal void.
That's what was the episode 5 area, right? From season 1?
Yeah. This is episode 5, season 1, when they do the temporal void and they meet Ol'Ed. We see Ol'Ed. We don't see him, but we hear him in this episode. As the bright purple on the screen. People are debating what it means. Is it Kang the Conqueror coming for her? Is it one of the openings from, Spider-Man No Way Home? I think it's Ol'Ed. I think that she's going to find a way to get past Ol'Ed to the Kang variants that live beyond it.
Yeah. Or she is Kang variant and it bows its knee to her.
Yeah. I think that there are 2 places where the temporal void's Ol'Ed will take you. If you were Loki, if you were Sylvie, it was always going to take you to the Citadel at the end of time. Mm-hmm. So that you could continue the loop. But I have a feeling if you're Ravonna Renslayer and you get through to Ol'Ed, it will take you to the Colosseum where all of the Lokis live. From Ant-Man Quantumania.
The Kangs.
I'm sorry, the Kangs. Yes, not the Ant-Man.
The Lokis. Well, Lokis live in the void. Come on.
Well, no, the Lokis do still live in the void.
Well, not anymore because he rewrote. He's allowed all the multiverse to exist now.
Maybe we don't.
So they would have been restored from the void.
We then see Mobius and Sylvie as Mobius goes back in time to look at his space on the timeline. Me and Andre have discussed this ad nauseum in multiple episodes. Having seen it all, having seen how it plays out, you're finally on my side that Sylvie was always right here and that Mobius needed to go back and be told and nudged to go back and find his place on the sacred timeline.
I still don't think so. No, I'd still disagree with that. I think Mobius would have been fine never knowing.
However, we do get this exchange between Sylvie and Mobius as he's looking on over his life on the sacred timeline.
The yard could do with a bit of work.
No, it's great. Christ, it's the best house on the block. Never look, never know.
It's weird that Loki's not here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, see you around, I guess.
Where are you gonna go?
You?
I might just wait here for a little bit.
I really hope this leads to, because again, the rumor is with Deadpool, the TVA gets involved. I'm really hoping it's these two teaming up to go chase after Deadpool and Wolverine.
So there are rumors that since the strike has ended, there have been rumors about what's going on. Because a lot of people at Marvel are apparently thinking that this is a perfect place to end Mobius.
It's
and that
true.
we'll never see Mobius again.
It is true. I don't disagree with that.
Mobius had originally filmed things for Deadpool. Supposedly, Owen Wilson had already filmed things for Deadpool. And apparently there are talks at Marvel about whether or not they should redo that and have it be somebody else. Whether it be Casey, whether it be B-15, whether it be Brad. Somebody else takes Mobius's place to go ahead and deal with Deadpool. And all the things that Deadpool is going to do. Because the Deadpool movie is supposed to be, according to all rumors and reports, Deadpool kills the Fox Marvel universe. He's going to go through and he's going to kill all of the Fox-related Marvel properties, which we'll talk about more tomorrow. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Mm-hmm.
However, this is where we get a look at Loki as he's watching his friends on the sacred timeline. And this is the final image of Loki, of any season of Loki, and expected to be the final image that we may see of Loki forever. Because Tom Hiddleston has says that this is the end of a 14-year journey with this character.
He said conclusion.
Which means done.
You know. But yeah. Again, I'm okay with it. Like, he's absolutely in a perfect place. The character kind of, I don't know. He finally found his glorious purpose. Is there any other reason for him to ever have to stand up off that throne?
Yes, because
until
eventually Kang is going to come for him. I think Kang Dynasty is going to be Kang defeating multitudes of Avengers, leading to Loki being put face to face with Kang the Conqueror. And we're going to get Battle World, where we have Loki in a team of heroes of his choosing, which is going to be Marvel heroes in their prime across all universes, taking on the Kangs. And maybe Dark Avengers. Fingers crossed, I think we might still get Dark Avengers in the Secret Wars.
Very
because
possible.
remember, we've been told that two of the people who are supposed to have heavy involvement in Secret Wars are Tobey Maguire and Hugh Jackman.
I'm down.
I am down. I just wish that there would have been more to what Kang does next here.
Yeah,
Because
I agree.
the only mention we get of Kang in terms of not seeing He Who Remains or Victor Timely is we get an offhanded comment of a file that's been given from Mobius to B-15 that's tracking where all of the Kang variants are in the worlds, in the timelines. And that one of them might know what's going on because he started a ruckus on an on an area adjacent to Earth 616.
The quantum realm
Happened in the Quantumania movie.
Oh, I loved it. I love that they tied it in. I really do.
Andre, 12 episodes, 2 seasons, no wows. What are your thoughts now looking back at Loki as a whole?
Honestly, like, and I've said this multiple times, season 1 was very up and down for me. It wasn't, like, I don't have the reverence for it that a lot of other people do. This season was almost perfection, man. Like, the story that was told was so good. Yes, there was a couple open threads at the end, but they did it so well. The evolution of Loki, we got to see him evolve once within the MCU's movies, and then we got to see him do it all over again in such a meaningful and beautiful way. And just to finally see him sit atop his throne, achieving glorious purpose, becoming the god of stories, and having that fulfillment. If you look at his face, he's finally, the way I look at his face, he finally has fulfillment. That's not a man who's mad, sad, happy. He's just content and fulfilled, in my personal opinion. Yeah.
I think Loki season 1 and 2 put together as a complete story. Well, season 2 makes everything that happened in season 1 make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Season 2 makes
except the shitty train episode, but
season 2 makes everything in Loki season 1 better.
Except the train episode.
No, the train episode is just fine.
No, it's terrible.
It's just fine.
It's terrible.
Loki is the best show that Marvel has put out there.
Oh, by far.
These 12 episodes of television, with the exception of Infinity War and Endgame as a 2-part series, is the best thing Marvel's ever put out there.
I disagree. The best thing Marvel ever put out was the original Iron Man.
No, I'm lumping everything from characters together. So the 2 episodes of Loki, the 2 seasons of Loki, the 12 episodes, are better than Infinity War and Endgame put together. They're better than the 4 Thors. They're better than the 3 Captain Americas. They're better than the 3 Iron Mans. They're better than the 3 Avengers, the 2 Avengers movies before the final 2. As a concurrent story, the Loki series is, in my mind, hands over one of the best things that's ever been put out by Marvel. And it is now securely number 2 in my top MCU properties. It now goes significantly as number 2 behind only Avengers Endgame.
I'd still put Infinity War and Endgame ahead of this. And that's me personally.
I do too. I think Infinity War and Endgame as a concurrent project are as good as Loki 1 and 2. However, I think as a well-told story, you could watch legitimately just Loki season 1 and season 2, having seen nothing else. And it's better than any other 2 things that Marvel can put together to do anything. Because Endgame and Infinity War aren't what Endgame and Infinity War are if you don't watch the 20-some-odd other things that come before it.
That's true.
Infinity War and Endgame are only great because we're Marvel nerds who have watched everything that Marvel has put out there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't see those, you don't get the same impact from those two shows.
Well, if you haven't seen Avengers, you wouldn't get the impact of this.
You do, because they give you just enough to understand who Loki was before this. You don't need to know everything else. I think you can go in blind, unseen, watch just these 12 episodes, and understand the character arc of Loki.
We'll agree to disagree on that, but yeah, I don't want to argue that point because your point you're making does make sense. I just don't agree with it. We'll go with that.
Hey, we're allowed to agree to disagree. Everybody's allowed to have an opinion.
Yeah.
Opinions are like buttholes. Everybody's got one.
And they all stink.
Yep, they all stink. Andre, as we wrap this up, I am going to open the Slack because I didn't do what you told me to do beforehand. So give me a moment and go ahead and talk about.
I already put it in. I already put it
in.
Yeah, I put it in. It's in the banners. Don't worry. It's in our banners.
Andre, where can the good people find you?
All right, I need to look at it again because I messed this up so badly last week. I had to redeem myself. You can find me on X, Mastodon, Blue Sky, and Hive at That Canada, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at That Canada. You can find me on Facebook at Andre and Melball Wrestling Talk. You can find me multiple times per week doing NJPW Pro Wrestling Review, Stardom Review, and our show Chop Talk, which comes out periodically, which we cover independent professional wrestling, which we will come back at the end of the month with 2 episodes for LPW and RCW from the same weekend, featuring RCW featuring Chris Bay. We'll be at that show. Please check those out at youtube.com/at Andre and Melball Wrestling Talk.
Good job, Andre. You have redeemed yourself. However, I do want to ask you a question. This week we did get notification that a certain Stardom wrestler is now All Elite. Talk to us about your thoughts, early thoughts, because I'm assuming they have not been recorded on
Nope.
Andre and Melball Wrestling Talk.
That's tomorrow.
Talk to us about your thoughts about Mariah May being All Elite.
I'm sad. A little sad that she ain't coming back to Stardom. Don't get me wrong. But I like me some AEW, so I'll check her out I'll again, I don't watch that show religiously every week, but I'm going to watch when I can. And she's going to be doing some stuff with Miss Timeless Tony Storm. It looks like she's Tony Storm's biggest fan. So, and again, some people found her a little bit of their cringe. I found it perfect because I know who this girl is and I know how good she actually is. Her charm, her thing, that is absolutely the kind of character you want to start her on. Have her be the super fan and just have her kind of just, and then burst out into being the goddamn star, baby.
I feel like we've seen that with Trish Stratus and Mickie James, but you know.
But again, I don't think she's going to play it in the same way of Mickie James being.
I understand. I just like to tweak AEW fans by telling them that they're not an alternative. They're just rehashing WWE.
Oh, yeah, they are 100%.
You can find me on Twitter at EdFries12584. You can find me on the Twitch at EdFries2002, where I do my gaming content, and I also simulcast all the wonderful things I do here at our local establishment. You can find me every Tuesday night as I talk all things NXT with my tag team partner who's been in the YouTube comments the entire show, Ash Bizarro, as we go ahead and talk all things NXT every Tuesday night as soon as NXT is over. You can catch me every Wednesday night as me and Parrish go ahead to head, and we play Wrestle Draft, where I am the current, reigning, defending, undisputed Season 2 champion of Wrestle Draft, as we continue on in Season 3, where I'm currently in the lead. But we're coming up to our second Premium Live event this Wednesday. You can also catch me. Normally, I would say here, you can catch me every weekend on Marvel Talk as we go ahead and review all the Loki episodes. There are no more Loki episodes. However, me and Andre will, in the next few weeks, start doing the MCU Rebound. We are going back to the beginning. In a few weeks, you'll be joining us for another Marvel Talk episode as we go ahead and talk all things Iron Man from 2008. The original Iron Man, MySpace joke and all, are going to be in there. We're going to talk about Iron Man and how all of this started. because there's a key line in that movie that will come to grips with tomorrow's review of The Marvels. Andre and I have seen The Marvels, and we'll be talking about this tomorrow. I am still working on potentially getting us a special guest to join us. We've had a couple people that we've tried to get, but unfortunately timelines did not work out with some of them. But we're hoping to go ahead and have some wonderful people that we can refer to you to go ahead and see it, because we're going to admit outright, these two chubby white faces are not the best representation of what this movie is all about.
Mm-hmm.
We implore you to go out on the social medias and find wonderful people of women of color, especially women, who are reviewing this movie and hearing their experiences and how they feel about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because
100%.
Because two chubby white guys do not do this justice about what this movie means to certain people, because we are not the target demographic for this movie. This movie is going to be the most divisive movie that Marvel has ever had reviewed. You thought Love and Thunder had divisive reviews. You thought people were confused about Shang-Chi. You thought people thought Captain Marvel was a bad movie.
They're wrong, by the way.
They are wrong. They are entirely wrong. But I can understand where some people, Marvel nerds especially, push the glasses up. This isn't a great movie. This is a fun movie. It may not be
awesome.
It may not be perfect, but it's fun.
It's great. I had a great time with this. I went with my childhood best friend, and we both came out of the movie going, "This was awesome." And he didn't like the first Captain Marvel movie, and he loved this movie, and he had a great time with this movie.
Astrid going ahead and reviewing. As I was doing my thing, I didn't have the comment section open, so I wasn't able to do it. Talking about Mariah May and AEW, she says, "Great so far." She says, "Taking over." She is excited to hear us talking about the Marvels tomorrow. And I'm assuming this is girl power.
Yes.
Understand.
Strong, powerful women.
I have a problem because both of you and I, spoiler alert, love this movie.
Oh, yeah.
This movie is just, again, further spoiler alert. This movie's in my top 10 of Marvel movies, period.
I have it re-ranked in a few movies, but I could see this sneaking into top 10 for me.
This movie easily jumps top 10 for me. It is fantastic. She says it's either girl power. Perfect translation. Like I said, we are not going to be the best review show of this movie because we are not the target demographic. We are hoping to get someone who can help us meet that target demographic a bit better. However, you will not see the two of us sitting here bashing that movie to holy hell.
Not even in the slightest.
Well, there are some things I'm going to take.
Well, okay, we're not gonna be bashing like some of the douchebags online. I might have some issues with some thing with the movies and their villain and their Marvel MCU-ishness of the villains. But I still thought everybody did great in this movie.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think that the Marvel villain problem definitely posed an issue. And by the way, we're not going to stop talking about the Hiddlestons, because Dar-Ben, the villain of this movie, is married to Tom Hiddleston.
Not yet, but she is engaged to it. Fiancé. She's this future Mrs. Hiddleston.
It's the only time I let us. It's true. I messaged her with a message that simply said, "Nobody wants to talk to me," as I was driving home from the movie, because Andre had already put in our group chat, "No spoilers."
Well, because this guy was got out of this movie about an hour before I was going, because I'm 2 hours behind this guy. So yeah, he was cut out an hour before I was going in. I'm like, I literally said, "I will retire as your co-host if you spoil," and I meant it for Loki and for the Marvels. I was like, "I will retire as your co-host."
Andre said no.
That's right. I said no.
And by the way, I will be honest. Other than saying the kittens are adorable, I spoiled nothing.
No.
And by the way, everybody knew the kittens were involved.
Honestly, I didn't because I avoided trailers. I avoided trailers.
Oh, well, okay. Kittens are involved in the movie. Oh no, I've spoiled it for you.
Kittens.
I love how the only thing we've talked about this movie is the villain problem and kittens.
It's the perfect setup.
It is the perfect setup to tomorrow. We will be joining you tomorrow. Until then, this has been Marvel Talk. That's been Andre. I've been Ol'Ed. This has been Loki. It was great. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.